Welcome to the Evans Legacy Financial Podcast, where real people have real conversations about money, mindset, and making moves. I'm your host, Jake Evans, and this show isn't about fluff or hype. It's about educating our community, sharing stories, and giving you the tools to make better decisions in business and in life. Well, let's dive in. Well, today we're here with David Fuentes. Good morning, David. How you doing?
Good morning. Good. How
and
you?
this is a guy who is one of the team leads or does team building and management leadership in my office. And I thought I'd bring him in today to discuss, diving into the art of leadership and team building. So you ready to go, David?
Let's do it.
All right, man. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are defining leadership versus management, why a strong leader is a foundation of a strong team, how to identify strengths and team members, and the impact of communication. And this is all about this. Our first section here is going to be about business, okay?
Okay. So
let me ask you something. What's one quality that every effective leader must possess, regardless of the industry?
Regardless of the industry. I think that's a great question. I think anybody that wants to be a leader or want to put themselves in a leadership position, I think one of the characters that a lot of people need to have is, I would say, first of all, you got to take pride in what you do,
right,
regardless of the industry. You could be washing cars and be a manager, it doesn't matter. It's funny you asked me that. When I used to do regular traditional work, when I used to go in for interviews, they used to ask me, so what is a trait that you have different than anybody else that we're interviewing? I said, well, I'm a leader, and as a leader, I'm gonna be a do it first leader. I go, even if you ask me to clean the bathrooms, you're gonna have the cleanest bathrooms.
I think I like that because you said it. You said it right there. Do it first, leader.
Yep.
A leader has to be willing to do what he's asking somebody else to do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
1,000%.
That's awesome. So, do you have a difficult time or a difficult decision as a leader that turned out to be a game changer for your team?
Yeah. I think sometimes in leadership, you have to be willing to let go of certain individuals or certain things that might distract your business or hold you back or hold the company back. And sometimes you got to make those hard decisions, and it's typical in any industry. Back in when I was a manager, I had to let go of a couple of my own friends that I hired at my company, thinking like, oh, these guys are going to come in and do a phenomenal job, but realizing that they just want to chill and not work, and they're like, oh, David's here, it's okay. And, I had to tell them a few times, like, hey, whatever you do, it affects me inside the leadership office. And it's either your family that's going to be taken care of or my family. And if you're not going to work, it's going to be my family.
Right.
And sometimes you got to do that stuff. So
and it's funny you say that because in any industry, I'm in real estate, I'm a notary, and in our business as well, I think having a lot of people aren't able or willing or don't know how to have those hard conversations. Back in the day when I was working as a dental tech, I was out doing dental work and working in dental offices, and I was a tech, and they were going to bring me on as manager. And I realized that all these guys I've been working with over the years are no longer my friends, they're my employees, and I can't treat them. And I had a hard time with that. This was 25 years ago, and I had a hard time with that. I think today I'm more equipped, knowing this kind of stuff. I'm more equipped to be able to handle that and have those hard conversations. Say, listen, it's just not working out. And like you said, if it comes down to my family or yours, man, I got to feed my family.
Absolutely,
so
1,000%.
That's really good. So and here we go. It leads into my next question, and you kind of answer it, about handling team members who are not willing to pull their weight, but then handling it without creating tension or resentment. So those friends, how do you handle it without them being resentful and them not being friends anymore? Can you stay friends?
I think so. I think in business or when you run a company and when you're a manager or management or leadership, sometimes there's frictions and people have feelings, and even when it's their own doing of getting let go or it's not working out, they're still going to hold resentment. And one of the things I've learned all through my life, my 49 years now, is you got to be nice. You got to be nice to people regardless of what's going on. Even though you might get upset with people, say, man, this guy's not pulling his weight. you still have to be professional. You still have to have respect for people. And I think I've always tried to do that as much as I could. And, I'm going to tell you a story that I let go of one of my good friends.
I love to hear this. Go ahead.
I let go of one of my good friends. He had a chronic tardiness. And he started working at 5 a.m. And for the first few months, it was good. 5 o'clock, he was there. Then it was 5:15. He was a single father of 2 young kids. And he said, well, I need an extra hour for me to get ready and get the kids ready. He said, sure, let's do 6 o'clock. I'll bend the rules a little bit. So I said, come in at 6. You'll be my 6 to whenever. And then it was 6, and it was 6:01, 6:05, 6:10, 6:15. And I was like, man, okay. I said, what's going on? He's like, well, I think I need to come in at 7. Perfect, let's do that. So we did 7, so 7:01, 7:10, 7:15. And then I said, dude, I said, we're having a chronic, like, something's going on. It's not your kids. He's like, well, I'm having a hard time waking up and getting ready. I said, I'm going to buy you an alarm clock. That's the type of manager I was. So I bought him an alarm clock, and I bought him a manual one, so I didn't want to hear the excuse that, oh, my electricity went out, my power went out.
There you go.
So I bought him a wind-up one. I said, hey, set it every night, and then, we scheduled it for 8. I told him, you come in at 8 to 5 or 8 to 6.
So now you've given him 3 hours leeway.
Leadway, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then he still showed up late, 8:15, 8:10. I said, you know what, dude? I said, you could just be my 9 o'clock to 7 p.m. guy. I need one guy anyways. And he didn't want to volunteer at the beginning, but then he ended up just falling into the position, and he still ended up coming in late. I said, man, this guy just has a chronic tardiness. So I had a conversation with management. I said, hey, I need to do what I need to do. And we let him go. And sure enough, the gentleman was upset with me, and he called me and wanted to fight me. And, as a man, young guy, not the most, I would say, coming not from the most educated family, grew up in the streets, it tends to get under your skin a little bit. So I was like, man, what's wrong with this dude? I gave him an opportunity. I'm going to go take care of this right now. We're going to handle this business because I don't want to be driving around town, having this guy get crazy with my family, my son. And then I thought about it. I'm like, man, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm a manager. I'm in a different phase of my life, different position. So I just told him, I said, hey, look, it was your position. It was your fault for showing up late. He ended up moving out of the town. Eventually, because I was so respectful and so nice, he called me back literally 3 months later. He's like, hey, I want to apologize to you, David. I was like, for what? He's like, it was my fault. I was the one being late. It had nothing to do with you.
So what I'm seeing here is a pattern of, and you said something earlier about keeping it professional, keeping it, and not personal. And this is something I tell my kids and my friends and people that I deal with like this. It's like, when you're dealing with something professional, keep the emotion out of it, because when we get emotions involved, the emotions take over, and that emotions don't belong. I'm sorry, but emotions don't belong in business.
They don't.
Right.
You got to have thick skin. They say you got to have rhino skin, man. And I learned through this business now that you got to have. It's like a duck's feather, right? Everything that falls on the duck's feather, the water just rolls off their feathers, and
water off a duck's back.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. And eventually he called me back. He apologized, and we ended up doing lunch, and we're good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story, and I love to hear that. And it kind of does and doesn't segue into our next. So what's now here? He probably had a motivational problem or whatever, not motivated to do what it is. What strategies today do you use to keep your team motivated, especially during those tough times when maybe they're struggling or whatever? That maybe now you look hindsight and go, well, maybe I could have done this. Maybe you've learned something now that you didn't know then.
Yeah, I think now, because I've been in this career now for almost 9 years, and you learn different skills, right? You learn how to motivate people, how to get them to the next level. Well, at least that's what you're trying to do. And it's kind of crazy because sometimes you want more for your team members than they want it for themselves. So I think some of the stuff that you learn along the way is how to motivate them, what triggers them. What, for example, we're gonna say this friend of mine, his motivation was his kids. So so you got to learn what motivates somebody to trigger them to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna step up as a leader, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that. I think you got to find what the person's looking for, what their dreams and goals are, regardless of the industry, because everybody has a dream and goal. Most people, not everybody, but most people do.
And that's the goal. And I'm just gonna go back to the whole of this show. That's the goal, is to develop people and get their mindset and their motivations to be maybe in a different place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you know what, I like that. And then, you know, finding a trigger, and for him it was his kids, and maybe saying, hey, this is your kids, man. You can't show up late because you have to feed those kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's some motivational areas there. You're not using the kids, but you're showing him the areas that maybe we can go, all right, that's awesome stuff. And then that kind of puts us into the next little phase of our discussion here, is leadership within the family.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to talk about how leadership principles translate to family dynamics, setting the example through action, balancing authority, the power of active listening, and family communication. So my first question in this is going to be, what does leadership look like within the family unit? Is it similar or different from business leadership?
Man, I think it's similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
How so?
I'll tell you this. My son. I love my son. He's gonna be 28 now. Since he was 8 years old, he started I call it a boxing career, because he did it for 14 years. He started at 8 years old. But I think discipline and leadership starts from a young age. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't get that as a child. I came from El Salvador, running away from the war. My parents didn't have time to like teach me stuff and, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do better to move to the next level in life, right? My parents worked in the fields, and that's what they wanted me to do. Hey, go find a job. They never told me, hey, you should do this so you could become a leader of the community, right? And I think family life and what I went through, because, you know, I went through my portion with my son and my family, it's his boxing career literally translated to leadership. Mm-hmm. And I just kept what I did over here, because I used to go train with my son as well. I didn't do it at his level, but he had a diet. I was on a diet.
Right.
I wasn't gonna tell him, hey, you got to be on a diet as a leader, and not do the diet with him either. Right. That showed leadership there at my household, but we did everything together. It was pretty awesome, actually. Yeah. So I think it translates from business to family.
And here's the thing that I'm hearing from what business is, you're a do-it-first leader.
Absolutely.
So from what I'm translating here is, we take that into our family, and I live in a situation where I've got people. It's really mixed. I've got a blended family, so I've got stepkids, I've got my kids, and my stepkids and my kids. It's two different things, and there's two different dynamics there.
Yeah.
And so I have to do the same thing. I have to lead by example. Strictly by example with the stepkids, where with my kids I can kind of have a firmer, approach to it. But I'm learning by grace, mainly by grace, and by just leading by example. I'm going to do it. If they don't do it, I have to remember that it's not my job to make them do it. It's my job to show them how to do it. And if they want to follow, then they get the benefit.
Absolutely.
And and I think that's where what we're looking at with what's the benefit of leadership in family too. So, so what, and you said you grew up, the El Salvador thing, you were running from the war or whatever it was. And what is one lesson you learned from a parent or guardian that you now use in your own family leadership?
I think, I don't know. My mindset's a little bit different than a lot of people. I have people that are like, man, you have no emotions. Like, well, I come from a hard, rough life. Running away from the war, you ain't got time to mess around and think about like, oh, I'm gonna go get Mattel toys and Barbies, and I'm gonna go get a PlayStation. It was like, I need to run away from my life. you
and I are a lot alike in that, because I grew up on the streets. Here in California, I grew up on the streets of Southern California, Northern California, and I didn't have that. I'm not sure how I'd answer that. My parent or guardian was either institutional inmates, peers that were on the streets with me, or law enforcement. And they weren't telling me good things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think in leadership and anything that you do, somebody's always trying to recruit you, right? And it goes back to leadership and building a team. a lot of people are afraid of that word, like, oh, you got to build a team or you got to recruit. Well, somebody's recruiting somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in L.A. coming from El Salvador at 8 years old. Guess who recruited me to the streets?
I think, you know what, I think we're doing that in family too. It's we don't use that, but we're leading them.
Yes.
We're recruiting them. We're recruiting them into life. Like I've got a kid in my life that, you know, is the credit thing and the money thing, and they didn't know how to manage money, and now they're in a place they just bought a brand new car.
Nice.
And they have a credit card that they're getting paid down, and they've got a better job, and they're managing them. They've got their own place, and I'm thinking that this was never going to happen, and here it is. They're doing it now. How that came about, I'm hoping that I had a little bit to do with that. You know what I mean? So, you know, and I'm going to segue into our next. I think our next question is like, you know, it's about communication. How do you foster open communication with your children, spouse, or family members without coming across as overbearing? And I know I'm going to let you answer this one.
I think that's one of my. I think that's probably one of my struggles when I was younger. Mm-hmm. You know, coming from a hard home. My mother and my father left El Salvador to give us a better life. I stayed with my grandfather. My grandfather was an old school type of guy. You know, this guy got in machete fights, so he had a slash across his eye. So he's blind from one side. He was missing a finger. So he came from a rough growing up situation when he was young, and he didn't know any better. So he translated that to me, and I translated that to my son. And I think that's the only thing that I would tweak. Not I would change, because I think that just helped my son be a stronger person, because you need leadership, and you need, you know, when you go to the military is really hard on kids. And they come out with PST. My son served in the Air Force. And the first time I went to visit him for his graduation, I was like, man, this is kind of crazy. And he was telling me all the things that they would do. So I was like, dang, sounds like the stuff I used to do, like crazy, like a father, right? Taking care of your kid, you want the best for them, not realizing that you're not realizing what you're doing. You can mess somebody up by verbal damage. You know, it's kind of crazy.
Yep. And I do the same thing. I have to make sure, because I'm a big guy. I've got a loud voice. You know, and I've been told, a lot of people think I'm angry. I'm passionate. My passion comes across as maybe anger or frustration. And when I am frustrated, it's even more multiplied. So I have to be very conscious and aware of my communication style with family members, and as opposed to business. And I have to be, it's a fine line, but I have to make sure, you know, my next question is kind of along, it kind of goes right into that, is how can families establish a sense of unity and teamwork, especially in times of conflict? And can I answer?
Yeah.
I'm going to let you answer that, but I've got a situation that just transpired.
Yeah.
That I had a situation in the morning with my better half, and I'll be honest, I was wrong, and I left the house, but I realized that I was wrong. So you know what I did is I pulled everybody that lives in the house together, and I sat them down and I said, here's A, B, C, and D. Here's what happened. Here's what went wrong. Here's how it's going to change. And that family dynamic of bringing them together and going, I'm being transparent. I'm being vulnerable here. I want you to know that, yes, there was conflict, but I don't want to carry that on to tomorrow. I want it to stop today, and I did it in a kind and loving way. So give me your answer to that question. I kind of share that because when I saw this question, I'm like,
You're like, oh.
Wait a minute, that just happened, you know?
Yeah, I think sometimes, I don't know, for me, I'm a little bit more, I hate conflict. I think that's one of my things that I really hate conflict. I love to be happy and smile all the time. So when things like that arise, you're right, you got to bring them up to the light right away. Say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. If you're wrong, hey, I was wrong. Let's move forward. I think one of the things I think about when I go to bed, I'm like, okay, who is mad at me? And I don't want to go to bed knowing that I'm mad with somebody and I could possibly not wake up the next day.
You know, you said that you hit it right. I mean, man, you hit it right on the head, because it's always even living on the streets. Yeah. It's like it's a biblical verse. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Yeah. Don't go to bed angry, because it's like I don't leave the house without some kind of affection with the people in the house, because what if I leave the house and the last words I say to them are damaging.
Absolutely.
I don't want to do that.
Me neither.
You know, so I have to. I mean, I do conflict. You know, but I don't necessarily like to start it, but I won't run away from it.
Yeah.
But I also know and have learned over the years that I have to respond in a kind and loving way to be able to resolve conflict or to dissolve the conflict.
And that's hard for me too.
Yeah,
That's very hard. Yeah.
because you even said it, the pride wells up.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
Man.
we want, as men,
Yep.
we want to say, "Wait a minute, what you talking about?"
Yep.
You know, so having that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a daily struggle. It's a daily thing that we have to remember and be aware of, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, this is all such good stuff, and I'm going to move into a really quick here before we run out of time. Friendships and community. Okay, so building a circle that holds an accountability, recognizing toxic dynamics, being a leader by example in social and community settings. Okay, and I know in our office here we have that big community
we
and
do.
a big social setting. So how do you maintain healthy boundaries with friends while still being a strong, supportive leader?
Man, that's a really hard one because in our industry is a little bit different than being at a manager. A manager, you're better off you're better off in a management position than what we do here. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you fall in love with people here. Mm-hmm. You tend to. I don't even call people here my peers or my friends. I call them family here.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different dynamic. So it's a little harder in management position at my job. I could separate a manager position from a friend or somebody there because you're a manager. You can let them know, hey, these are the rules. This is what we're gonna do. Here, it's a little bit deeper and it's a little harder to actually separate some of that stuff. But I would say have respect for people. Remember that we're still business partners here. Mm-hmm. We work together. I think if you can remember some of that stuff and not, again, hold grudges and hold any feelings.
There it is right there. We're talking about emotions again.
Yep.
And even in friendships, emotions are good, but when it comes to cultivating those friendships in community, in business and professionalism, sometimes we do have to keep the emotion out of it.
We do. We do.
So I'm going to skip a question because we've already covered it, but the last couple are really important. I think you just touched on how can we spot the difference between leading and controlling in our personal relationships?
Wow. Personal relationships? I think when I was younger, I'll tell you my younger self, I was very controlling. Mm-hmm. Hispanic, coming from not controlling like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, I'm going to hold you down, whatever. None of that stuff. Just like wanted to micromanage everything. Mm-hmm. And I started to realize like, dude, you got to let go. You got to let people do their thing, right? So in business, I've learned to let go. And sometimes people need to struggle to get through the struggle to become leaders. Just when I started my career here, I did a bunch of trainings and I felt like I can't do this. And then Carlos let go of my hand. My mentor let go of my hand and I started cruising with myself. And eventually I was like, man, I can do this, right? And I think that's
confidence.
You get confidence, you know what you're doing. And I think that's what that question is, just letting go a little bit.
Okay, that's good. That's good stuff. So, and here we talked about we've been talking kind of a little bit about vulnerability. So, what role does vulnerability play in a leader among friends and community members?
Man, that's tough because when you're in a leadership position, you don't want to be too vulnerable. I would say, in our industry, I would say you always go to your mentor when you're feeling vulnerable.
And we're talking, that's in business, but now we're talking about and I'm sorry I'm getting away from the microphone, but we're talking about friends and community members and being vulnerable there.
Got it. I think it's important to be vulnerable in your community and I would say friends and family. Business is a little different, but with friends and family, yeah, you have to. I think that just shows you got a heart. You care for people.
And I think a little bit of that can translate. I think you're kind of seeing this. I think a little bit of that can translate into our business life.
Absolutely.
Not being too vulnerable, but being vulnerable enough to say, hey, I was wrong. So my vulnerability is this. If somebody asks me a question in business and I don't know the answer, I'm not going to try to lie my way through it. I'm going to be vulnerable and say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to get it for you by the end of the day.
Yeah, I like that.
Or if it's important, I'm going to say, I can have an answer to you in about 15 minutes if you give me that. And I think people want to hear that if you don't know something, you're going to find out.
Yep. That was my career when I first started. I was like, let me write that down. Let me tell you guys exactly later. So
we've kind of come to the end, and really good, really powerful stuff, man. David, I really appreciate you being here. And we talked about business and building strong teams and strong relationships within the family and vulnerability and being a do-it-first leader and things like that. What is one final piece of advice you can give to our audience, our community here, before we go?
I would say, make it be anything, right? I would say be kind to people. Be kind to people. Have respect for people. Love on your family. I always call my son, and I call him. I tell him, I love you, son. And he tells me back he loves me. And I think that's super important to tell people that you love them. And I would say just be kind.
I like that. Well, David, man, this has been awesome. I didn't expect it to go as deep as we went, but I really am glad it did. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We're going to bring you back for another segment for something else as far as business goes. But when we talked about leadership and things like that, I see it because you're a leader in my office. You're one of my leaders. You're one of the guys I go to. So I appreciate it, and that's all the time we have now. Next time, we're going to be covering life insurance and what it really is. We're going to be covering about living benefits and debunking common myths about life insurance. We're going to get the differences between term, whole, and universal life policies, all kinds of stuff. So if we're going to talk about wealth management. It's going to be a series of three different shows, 3 different episodes, to talk about all this stuff. And if you have any questions or anything about life insurance, man, be sure to tune in.
I will.
And, I want our audience, if you have your own leadership stories or struggles, get a hold of me. evanslegacy.com, evanslegacyfinancial.com. The website has a place for you to email me. In the bottom right corner is a chat bubble. You can chat with me live, whenever you want. So give me a call. And again, David, man, I really thank you and appreciate you being here today. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning into the Evans Legacy Financial Podcast. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more real conversations that move the needle in life and business. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and never stop chasing what matters.